There are some stories that should never be told. Stories that once you hear them, they cling to you in the dark, creeping into your thoughts when you least expect it. So, if you're sure you want to listen, just know, you might not sleep so easily once the tale is over. Have you ever stopped at one of those hotels on the side of the road, the kind that seems like it's from another time? Well, Alice did. She was on a business trip, driving late at night, when she found this old hotel just off Route 47. It was quiet, tucked away, with a faint vacancy sign flickering in the dark. She thought it looked quaint, a little run down, but she didn't need much, just a place to crash for the night. The receptionist greeted her with a polite, distant smile. You know the kind. Friendly, but like they weren't really paying attention. Alice asked for a room, and the receptionist handed her the key to room 214. But before she could leave the desk, they mentioned something strange. Just so you know, room 214 doesn't have any windows. Alice stopped for a second, a little confused. Why not? She asked. The receptionist just shrugged, like it was no big deal. Old building. Strange design. She wasn't thrilled about the idea, but she was too tired to care. A windowless room? Not ideal, but it wasn't like she was planning to stare out of any windows tonight anyway. So, she took the key, climbed the narrow stairs, and made her way down the quiet hallway. When Alice opened the door, the room seemed normal enough. 4 walls, a bed, a dresser, and a large mirror hanging on the wall directly across from the bed. But it felt closed in. The air was thick, almost stifling, and the lack of windows made the walls feel like they were closing in on her. The mirror caught her eye. It was old, with an ornate frame that looked worn, its once shiny edges dulled over time. As Alice glanced at her reflection, she felt a slight chill run down her spine. Her reflection looked off. She couldn't put her finger on it, but there was something about the way her eyes looked in the glass. Darker, somehow. She brushed it off, telling herself she was just exhausted. She tossed her bag onto the bed and sighed, trying to shake off the odd feeling that hung in the air. As she glanced at the mirror again, she noticed something subtle but strange. The reflection mimicked her movements, but not exactly in sync. When she reached for her bag, there was the slightest delay before her reflection followed. Her fingers brushed against the fabric of the bag, but her reflection still hadn't moved. It was just a fraction of a second behind her, but enough to make her pause. She froze, staring at the mirror, waiting to see if it would catch up. It did, but the feeling lingered. It was like the image wasn't really a reflection at all, more like something pretending to be her. She shook her head. It's just the lighting, she whispered to herself, trying to reason away the unease growing inside her. But the more she watched her reflection, the more it unsettled her. Alice paced around the room, glancing at the mirror from the corner of her eye. She turned quickly, expecting to catch it out of sync again, but every time she looked directly, the reflection behaved. It was only when she saw it out of the corner of her eye that it seemed off. Still, she couldn't ignore the tension in the air. The room seemed to close in tighter the longer she stayed. The room seemed to grow smaller with every passing minute, the quiet pressing in on her from all sides. Alice's eyes kept drifting back to the mirror, even when she tried not to look. Her reflection was there, as it should be, but the longer she stared, the more wrong it felt, like something lurking just beneath the surface, waiting. She paced the room to ease the tension, but the air felt thick, suffocating, and no matter where she stood, she could feel the weight of the mirror behind her, pulling her attention back to its unmoving gaze. Hours passed, or at least she thought they did. It was hard to tell in the darkness of a windowless room. The clock on the nightstand ticked faintly, but when she checked the time, the hands hadn't moved much at all. She rubbed her eyes, telling herself she just needed sleep. Lying in bed, she tried to relax, but her eyes kept drifting back to the mirror. Her reflection lay there, mimicking her, but that strange delay lingered. It was watching her, too closely. She turned over, forcing herself to look away. But no matter how hard she tried to fall asleep, her mind wouldn't rest. It kept pulling her back to that mirror. The thought of her reflection, just lying there, waiting. Alice finally sat up, restless. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed and stood. Maybe a glass of water would help clear her head. She walked toward the bathroom, glancing at the mirror as she passed. Her reflection moved with her, stepping in time as she headed to the sink. She splashed some water on her face, trying to shake off the eerie feeling that had been creeping up on her all night. She dried her hands and returned to bed, feeling somewhat calmer. But as Alice lay back down, something in the corner of her eye made her heart skip a beat. She turned to look at the mirror and froze. Her reflection wasn't in bed anymore. It was standing at the foot of the bed, watching her. Alice's heart pounded as she stared at the reflection. It stood perfectly still, a hollow smile stretching across its face. A smile that didn't belong to her. Slowly, the reflection started to move forward as it started to crawl onto the bed. She could feel the subtle movement of the bed and the tug of the blankets as they shifted under the weight of the reflection's movements. Panic surged through her. She scrambled out of bed, nearly tripping as she rushed toward the door. Her hands fumbled for the handle, but she managed to yank it open and bolted down the hallway. When she reached the lobby, the receptionist was still there, waiting with that same distant smile. But something was wrong. The receptionist's smile. It was identical to the one her reflection had shown. Hollow, empty. Alice opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The receptionist just stood there, smiling that unnatural smile. Without another word, Alice rushed past, pushing through the front door into the cold night air. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she put as much distance between herself and the hotel as possible. She crossed the street, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but something made her stop. She couldn't help herself. She looked back, and there, in the glass door of the hotel, she saw it, her reflection, just standing there, inside the hotel, smiling at her from behind the glass with that same hollow smile and dark eyes. She could feel it deep down. She had left a part of herself behind in that hotel, a part of her that she would never get back. So, if you ever find yourself driving late at night down Route 47 and you see a faint flickering vacancy sign, don't stop. No matter how tired you are, no matter how inviting it looks, just keep driving. Some reflections are best left unseen. Thanks for joining us in the shadows tonight. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to WispHollow Tales for more eerie stories that might just keep you up at night. And remember, the next story could be lurking right around the corner waiting for you.